Everything I believed about our marriage shifted. I remember standing in our bedroom that morning, smoothing the soft fabric of my summer dress, feeling quietly proud that after 4 years of marriage I could still bring a smile to my husband's face with something as simple as showing up at his office with his favorite pastries. Grant Collier, my husband, is the operations director at Titan Works, one of the largest construction firms in our city. He often comes home exhausted, weighed down by decisions and deadlines, but he always makes time to listen to my stories from the counseling center where I work with children. That is why I wanted to bring him a small moment of joy on our anniversary. But when I arrived at the Titan Works building, my plan fell apart in a single sentence. The security guard raised his hand and said calmly, "Madam, you cannot enter. Mr. Collier's wife already came by earlier." I froze. His wife. According to him, she had just left, and when I turned to look I saw the last person I ever expected to see walking out of the lobby. Sabrina Lane, Grant's ex-wife. In that instant something inside me cracked. I did not know whether to feel confused, embarrassed, or betrayed. All I knew was that the man I trusted had a life at work I clearly was not part of, and this moment was only the beginning of everything I was about to learn. I stood frozen on the sidewalk as Sabrina Lane walked past me without a glance, her heels clicking confidently against the pavement. She looked exactly as I remembered from the few pictures Grant had shown me years ago, tall, composed, perfectly dressed in a tailored navy suit that seemed to say she belonged anywhere she walked. I had never felt threatened by her before, not even when Grant briefly mentioned that their marriage ended simply because they wanted different things. But seeing her like this outside his building, being greeted as if she still belonged in his life, drained all warmth from my body. I forced myself to step aside and pretend I had made a mistake about the building. To the security guard I smiled tightly and asked for directions to the Human Resources Department. Satisfied that he had corrected my error, he let me through. My pulse hammered in my ears as I made my way to the elevators. Instead of going to HR, I pressed the button for the 6th floor where I knew Grant's office was located. The hallway was quiet, the low hum of printers and distant voices drifting from open doors. When I reached Grant's office, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. Curiosity and dread pushed me forward. Inside, Grant sat hunched over a spread of documents. His dark hair was slightly toused the way it always was when he concentrated. Just then his associate director Harold Briggs entered the room with a stack of files. "Grant, how are we looking on the Lakeshore District project?" Harold asked. Sabrina submitted the updated forms. "We should be on track by tomorrow." Sabrina. There it was again. I leaned closer, trying to hear every word. "It is good you two can maintain such a smooth partnership," Harold continued. "Not everyone can work with their ex-spouse without complications." Grant sighed quietly. "I just keep it off Lena's radar. She gets sensitive about these things." The words hit me like a slap. Sensitive. As if my feelings were an inconvenience. As if honesty would somehow be too heavy for me to handle. I backed away from the door before either of them could spot me. My hands felt cold even though the hallway was warm. Sensitive. The word replayed over and over in my mind like an accusation I had never agreed to. I thought about the way Grant always kissed my forehead when he came home tired. The way he asked about my day at the counseling center. The way he laughed when I baked something new. How could the same man look at me and think I was too fragile to hear the truth? I left the building as quickly as I could, keeping my eyes on the floor so no one would notice the tremor in them. Outside the air felt thick. My plan had been so simple. Bring pastries, share a small moment of joy. Instead I walked away with the image of Sabrina's confident stride and Grant's quiet decision to keep me in the dark. On the bus ride home I tried to convince myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe Sabrina just helped on one project, maybe the security guard misunderstood. Maybe Grant hid it only to avoid unnecessary tension. But each excuse dissolved as quickly as it formed. The truth was simple. My husband had chosen not to tell me something important. Not once, not in passing, not even gently. Grant came home late that evening. He greeted me with his usual tired smile as he set his briefcase down. "Sorry I am late, Lena. Negotiations ran over again." Negotiations. That was the word he used whenever he wanted me to stop asking questions. I forced a smile and offered him dinner, though my appetite had disappeared hours ago. As he talked about his long day, I kept hearing Harold's voice. "It is good you two can maintain such a smooth partnership." And the part that hurt most, she gets sensitive about these things. A quiet doubt settled in me, not loud enough to accuse but strong enough that I no longer recognized the calm of our home. The next morning I woke with a knot in my stomach. Grant left early as usual, kissing my cheek before heading out the door. I watched him go, wondering how many mornings he had stepped into a life I knew nothing about. My schedule at the counseling center was light that day, so when I finished my sessions around lunchtime, I felt the unanswered questions tug at me again. I could not sit at home pretending everything was normal. I drove to the TitanWorks building and parked across the street, far enough away that no one would notice me. From there I had a clear view of the glass entrance and the line of parked cars. It was a bright afternoon, the kind where people strolled through the plaza on their breaks. I sat very still, feeling strangely out of place in the middle of such an ordinary scene. Around 2:30 a familiar silver sedan pulled into the lot. Sabrina stepped out wearing a sleek gray dress and carrying a folder tucked under one arm. She moved with confidence, the kind of ease that comes from belonging somewhere. She walked straight inside without needing to check in or wait. She clearly came here often. I waited. Minutes stretched into nearly an hour. When she finally emerged at 3:30, she did not head to her car. Instead, she walked down the sidewalk toward a small corner cafe. I followed at a distance, trying to appear casual, though my pulse betrayed me. Through the cafe window, I saw her greet a woman in her 20s who looked pale and tired. And then a little boy about 5 or 6 rushed into Sabrina's arms. He had dark hair and soft features. Something inside me twisted sharply. The boy looked strikingly like Grant. The same eyes. The same gentle curve of his smile. Sabrina bought him a cookie and sat with him while the younger woman ordered tea. They looked like a small family. I pressed closer to the window without realizing it. Every assumption I had held about Grant's past shifted in seconds. Was this why he never talked about his first marriage? Had he kept a child hidden? Was this why he worked so closely with Sabrina? My breath shook as I stepped back from the glass. I felt a sharp mix of fear, anger, and disbelief rising all at once. I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to keep following the truth wherever it led. I waited until Sabrina and the others left the cafe before following them again, careful to keep a distance. The little boy held her hand as they walked, swinging their arms playfully. The younger woman walked beside them, moving slowly, as if still recovering from something. I trailed them down 2 blocks until they reached an older apartment building with pale brick walls and a narrow entryway. When they stepped inside, I hesitated at the door, pretending to check my phone while listening. A row of mailboxes with faded labels lined the lobby wall. One of them read Lane C. Apartment 3 billion. My pulse quickened. Lane. The same last name as Sabrina. So the younger woman was her sister, and the child was likely hers. But the resemblance to Grant still gnawed at me. I climbed the stairs quietly. On the 3rd floor, the door to 3 billion was slightly ajar. I heard the little boy's voice inside. "Aunt Sabrina, can we go to the park today?" "We will, Mason. First, your mom needs to rest and take her medicine." And the relief hit me all at once, and yet confusion remained. So he was not Sabrina's son. That still did not explain why he looked so much like Grant, or why Grant had never mentioned her sister. I stepped back before anyone noticed me and hurried outside. A few minutes later, the 3 of them emerged again. Mason now held a bright blue backpack decorated with superheroes, almost too large for his small frame. They got into the same silver sedan I had seen earlier. I quickly ordered a rideshare and asked the driver to follow their car from a safe distance. They drove across town to a pediatric clinic. Inside the waiting room, Mason fidgeted in his seat, while Sabrina checked him in. I stood far enough to avoid recognition but close enough to hear when the nurse stepped out with a clipboard. Mason Lane. The name echoed in my mind. Lane, not Collier, not my husband's name. Whatever resemblance I thought I had seen dissolved in an instant. My shoulders dropped as a flood of relief washed through me. But just as quickly a new question formed. If the child had nothing to do with Grant, why had he been keeping so much from me? Why hide his work with Sabrina? Why let a security guard think she was still his wife? The problem was no longer the boy. It was the silence between my husband and me. A silence that suddenly felt far heavier than anything I had imagined earlier that day. That evening I tried to act normal, but normal felt impossible. I kept thinking about the clinic, the apartment building, the way Sabrina handled Mason with such ease, and the fact that Grant had hidden all of this from me. When he finally came home around 8:30, he set his keys on the counter and smiled the same familiar tired smile he always gave me. "Long day," he said, loosening his tie. "Meetings nonstop. I am ready to collapse." Meetings, another vague explanation. I nodded, heating up the dinner I had barely touched earlier. We sat across from each other at the table, and for the first time in our marriage I felt like he was a stranger sitting in my home. "How is the Lakeshore project going?" I asked casually. "Complicated," he muttered. "A lot of calculations, a lot of back and forth, nothing worth talking about at home. When I am here I want to disconnect from all of that." There it was again, the soft dismissal, the invisible wall he had been building without my permission. He did not ask about my day, he did not notice how quiet I had become, and he definitely did not sense the storm gathering behind my eyes. Unable to sleep that night, I lay beside him listening to the faint rhythm of his breathing. At some point I turned and saw his phone on the nightstand, screen lit with a recent notification. I reached for it slowly, guilt twisting in my stomach, but the need to know the truth overpowered everything else. Inside his messages I found exactly what I feared and yet did not expect. Conversations with Sabrina. Frequent ones. Some about work, some about her sister's surgery, and then one line that pierced straight through me. "I am not ready to explain this to Lena yet." My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Explain what? Why did Sabrina know things about my husband that I did not? Why did she get the truth while I received fragments? When Grant stirred beside me, I put the phone back quickly and lay frozen, staring into the dark. The silence between us felt deeper than any mistake either of us had made. It felt like a warning, a sign that our marriage was cracking in places I had never noticed until now. By the next morning, the weight of everything I had seen and everything Grant had hidden felt unbearable. I moved through my routine in a haze, unable to focus on the children at the counseling center, unable to stop replaying that one message on his phone. "I am not ready to explain this to Lena yet." It echoed like a distant accusation every time I tried to breathe. That evening when Grant walked through the door, I knew I could not delay the truth any longer. He hung his jacket, kicked off his shoes, and smiled the way he always did. But something in me refused to pretend. "Grant," I said softly, "we need to talk." His smile faded. That sentence never meant anything simple. He sat across from me on the sofa, hands clasped as if preparing for impact. "I saw your messages with Sabrina," I said. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to continue. "I know about her sister. I know you have been helping with the medical bills. I know she works with you every day on the Lakeshore project, and I know you did not tell me any of it." Grant exhaled slowly, his eyes falling shut. "Lena, I can explain." "Then explain it," I whispered. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "When Sabrina and I ended our marriage, it was clean. No children, no courtroom battles, just two people admitting they were not right for each other. When the Lakeshore project came up, Harold suggested bringing her in. She is talented and available. I hesitated at first, but we needed someone with her experience." "But why hide it from me?" "Because I did not want to hurt you," he said. "I knew how it would look, working with an ex, seeing her every day, and then when her sister got sick, when she asked for help, I knew you might misunderstand that too. So instead you let me find out in the worst way," I said quietly. He dropped his head. "I should have told you. I just did not know how. I thought keeping things simple would protect you." I swallowed hard. Protect me from what? The truth. Grant finally looked at me. From feeling like my past mattered more than my present with you? His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time in days I saw the man I married trying to reach me through a wall he had accidentally built himself. 2 days passed before my phone rang with a number I did not recognize. When I answered, a calm, familiar voice spoke on the other end. "Lena, this is Sabrina Lane. I hope you do not mind me calling. I would like to meet with you if you are willing." For a moment I could not speak. Of all the people I expected to reach out, she was the last. But something in her tone was sincere, almost gentle. After a long breath I agreed, and we set a time to meet at a small bistro near the river. When I arrived, Sabrina was already there. Gone were the business suits and polished confidence I had seen outside Titan Works. She wore jeans and a soft cream sweater. For the first time she looked simply human, not like a threat. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat across from her. "I know things have been confusing." "Confusing did not begin to describe it," I admitted. She nodded slowly. "I am aware of how this must look. Grant and I working together again, me showing up at the building almost daily, the situation with my sister. I understand why you felt unsettled." I waited, unsure what she would say next. "But Lena," she continued, "I want you to know there is absolutely nothing between Grant and me except respect and old history. Our marriage ended a long time ago. We grew in different directions and we accepted it. We have closure, something many divorced couples never reach. I studied her face. She did not look defensive. She looked tired from carrying too many responsibilities. My sister Charlotte had emergency surgery, Sabrina explained. Medical bills piled up. I stepped in to care for Mason, and when I needed help with the logistics, Grant offered. He has always had a soft heart for people in trouble. That part of him did not change after the divorce. She paused, then added quietly, and for the record, I asked him not to tell you we were working together. I did not want to complicate your marriage. That fear was mine, not his. Her honesty disarmed me. For the first time since everything began, I felt the tension in my body loosen just a little. The following weekend, Grant suggested something I did not expect. Why don't we invite Sabrina and her family over for dinner? I think it would help clear the air for everyone. A part of me hesitated, but another part understood that avoiding the situation would only leave old doubts alive. So I agreed. On Sunday afternoon, I prepared a simple meal while Grant set the table. When the doorbell rang, I took a steadying breath before opening it. Sabrina stood there with her sister Charlotte, who still looked a bit pale but stronger than before. And beside them was Mason, clutching a toy truck and smiling shyly. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Grant greeted Charlotte like an old friend and knelt so he was eye level with Mason. "Hey buddy," he said gently. "I heard you like building things. Want to see the wooden blocks I have?" Mason's eyes lit up instantly. Yes. The evening unfolded more naturally than I expected. Charlotte thanked Grant repeatedly for helping with the medical bills. Her gratitude was so genuine it softened something inside me. She explained how overwhelmed she had been after her surgery, and how much it meant to have support she did not have to beg for. At one point, Mason tugged at my sleeve and asked if I could help him build a bridge with the blocks. The innocence in his request made my heart warm. Within minutes, we were all laughing in the living room, as his bridge collapsed for the third time. Later, while washing dishes with Sabrina, she glanced at me and said quietly, "I am glad you gave today a chance. I know misunderstandings can build walls before we even see them forming." I nodded. I just needed clarity and honesty. "You deserve both," she said. There was no hostility in her voice, no hint of rivalry or tension, just two women acknowledging the complicated ways life can twist people into knots they never meant to tie. When they left that night, Grant slipped his arm around my waist. "Thank you for trusting us enough to let this happen." For the first time in weeks, I felt something settle peacefully inside me. The questions that once echoed loudly now rested quietly in their place. Not because everything was perfect, but because the truth had finally taken its rightful seat at our table. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm that felt steadier than before. Charlotte recovered fully and found a new bookkeeping job at a small firm near her apartment. Mason started kindergarten and proudly told his teachers about the bridge he built at our house, the one that kept falling until Grant helped him make it stand. Sabrina and her boyfriend Evan got engaged, and when she invited us to their small celebration, I realized how far we had all come from those confusing early days. As for Grant and me, something shifted quietly but permanently between us. We began talking more openly, not just about work or schedules but about fears, insecurities, and the parts of our past we had both avoided. One evening after dinner, he admitted, "I did not hide things to deceive you. I hid them because I was scared of losing you." I looked at him and understood something important. Secrets are not always born from betrayal. Sometimes they grow out of fear. A year later, we welcomed our daughter, Emma. When Sabrina and Charlotte visited us in the hospital, Mason stood beside the bed and whispered, "She is so small. Can I read books to her when she gets bigger?" I smiled and nodded, realizing how naturally our lives had blended. Looking back, I see now that the moment I walked into Titan Works, expecting to surprise my husband, turned out to be the moment life surprised me instead. Not with betrayal, but with truth. Not with loss, but with a deeper understanding of love. If there is one lesson I carry from this chapter, it is this: do not let silence fill in the blanks of your imagination. Ask questions, share fears, speak truth even when it feels uncomfortable. Trust can only grow in the light. If this story resonated with you, feel free to like, share, and comment. Your voice helps this community grow and reminds others that healing begins where